placement for MLA in text citations. I kind of talked about that a few minutes ago, but you might want to read the last section of the pages provided in that packet. So moving on to works cited. There's an example of a works cited page at the very, very end of your packet. Okay, so I'm at the end of the packet, so it looks like this. This is a perfect model of what yours should look like. Obviously, I've written on there myself, just remember it needs to be in alpha order. But I'm going to talk a little bit more about works cited right now. So here's rules for MLA works cited page. So the first rule is it has to be on a separate page. Even if the last page of your essay is 2 lines long, you still have to have a separate page. The second rule is you have to center the word works cited. So that's your title. Also notice there's no page numbers on works cited. Okay, so that's important to remember. Double space throughout. Alphabetize list by names of authors or editors. If a work does not have an author or an editor, alphabetize it by the first word of the title other than a, an, or the. I'm going to show you in a few minutes on the next slide an example of that. If your list includes 2 or more works by the same author, you're going to use 3 hyphens followed by a period. The 3 hyphens must stand for exactly the same name or names as it appears in the first entry. Again, in the next slide, I'll show you an example of that. Do not indent the first line of each works cited entry, but indent any additional lines 1/2 inch or 5 spaces. So in other words, the first line comes out to the 1 inch margin, and then every line after that within the citation, within the individual citation, is indented 5 spaces. I'll show you an example of that in a second. One thing that came up in class in a couple of periods is the font. My recommendation is whichever font you choose to write your paper in, keep your works cited page consistent. So use the same font. If you use Helvetica, if you use Times Roman, again, MLA says it has to be a nice, professional, easy to read font. All right, so here is an example. Now, really quick, in that big purple square, it says be sure to double space, meaning your works cited. This PowerPoint does not show true format in the sense of the spacing because I was trying to fit it all on one screen. So see the paper copy, which is this copy, that shows you the correct spacing. All right, so here in the first entry and this works cited, this is an example of if there's no author. Again, to know which format to use for which type of source, you're either using easybib.com and or if you're using EBSCO, it automatically will cite for you. So if you're using easybib.com, remember you have to have the correct source type. Sometimes AutoCite works, but sometimes it doesn't. So, for example, if you are trying to cite Food Inc., you have to make sure you're selecting movie because it's a documentary. If you are citing an interview, like the interview with Michael Moss, you have to make sure that you select radio for the radio interview. If you select Food Revolution as a source for your paper, that's a television show. So again, these are things that none of us really memorize, but we just need to know where to find the information. So easybib.com and or the citation format that is provided in EBSCO. But remember, if you're using EBSCO, you've got to remember to select MLA because that gives you in EBSCO a lot of choices. And you don't want to have the wrong format selected. All right, so Clinton, Bill, so that's the author in this particular one. Dean, Cornelia, okay, again, an author provided. And see, notice the indentations. The first line comes out to the margin, 1 inch margin, and then the next one is 5 spaces in. So this is a review of An Inconvenient Truth. Okay, here is a website. This is a website. So again, remember that if you're using a source like this, and it's certainly sponsored by this coalition group, Cooler Heads Coalition, remember, if you're using an attributive tag, don't use globalwarming.org as your source, because it's just not appropriate. I mean, no one really understands what globalwarming.org is. It's too vague. You're always going to, if you're using it within the text, you're going to use the group or the author if the author is provided. All right, here's another example. Just kind of going down the line. I'm going to get to, and here's an example of a film. And here is the example I want to show you, this one right here. Okay, because so remember in the previous slide when we talked about if there's two sources that use the same name as their author, okay, or the speaker in our case, then you're going to use for the second entry the 3 hyphens. So this Nordas, William D., he wrote both of them, okay? And so the second entry is going to have the hyphens. How we decided this one came before this one is we used the word after, and then we compared it to global. And so A obviously comes before G. While I have this page up, I forgot to point out one thing here for this source. Notice here, Milk and Michael, he's the first name on this particular source. Again, sources will oftentimes be listed on a textbook, let's say, for example, or a larger article or review or study in the order of the amount of that each author contributed to that source. So when you're listing them in a row like this, it would be the last name first for just the first name, and then for the subsequent names, you're doing first name last, first name last, first name last. And remember, I showed you in the previous slide that if there's over 3 names, then you're going to use the et al. And again, you can find that information in the MLA packet. And then here's obviously the last entry. Now remember, you want your works cited double-spaced on a separate page. If it needs to go on to 2 pages, if you have that many sources, then you'll continue on to a second page. Again, no page number is needed for the works cited. And the works cited is not included in the page number. So if your goal is 6 to 10 pages, this is an addition. So if you wrote 10 pages, this would be your 11th page. Okay, so if you want an online source, there is a link to Cornell University MLA format. There's also several other online formats. This link can be found on my webpage, and I think the library, Valhalla Library, also has a link to MLA online format. Certainly check out my website for any other support materials, including the PowerPoint on MLA rules and format, and also a link to this video if you'd like to share it with other people. So good luck. If you have any questions, remember, I can't emphasize this enough, the packet that was provided for you, especially the adjoining pages, okay, that look like this. You want them by your side, and you really do have to be careful. Please review the rubric. Remember that citations are a big part of this, and accurately citing your sources will be evaluated. Have a good one.